All right, let's see. We are live. Hopefully, everything is going well with everyone. It's been a little bit since I've been online. I was out for the last, I was out for 10 days in October to China. So lots of catching up on sleep and we call it. Yeah, we lost some time, definitely for sure. But yeah, hopefully everyone's doing well. Wanted to do a quick live here about consulting, but I'll kind of give it a few seconds for people to catch up. Actually, I'm also going to plug in my laptop. Should have done that already. Hey, everyone. Welcome in again. Thanks for joining. I'm getting back into the swing of things after being out. I was out almost for 2 weeks in a different country, which was a lot of fun. I haven't done that for a very long time. So it was a lot of fun. But really want to talk about consulting and just different ways you can make money consulting, or at least like just different opportunities. Because there's definitely a lot of options. You don't just have to do your hourly consulting, but that's obviously where things start. So, oh yeah, I forgot I was going to post this on. Hold on, while I just remembered. I also wanted to post this on the Technical Freelancer Academy, which is just a community that I have where people kind of share. So let's see. Let me get this from here. So yeah, so just give me a second while I'm posting this so that people can see it. Hope everyone's doing well. Feel free to ask some questions if you have them. I will definitely try to get to them. I'm just going to post this somewhere. Different ways. Consulting. Oh, let's see. Sorry again. I just remembered I should have posted this already. Again, feel free to ask questions while I am kind of doing this. All right, cool. All right, so we can get started. I'm sure we have everyone who will be joining, so I'm just going to share my screen just to help me do some talking here. Share screen, window, Chrome tab, I guess. All right, so cool. You can see it. And let me just change myself to here. Cool. All right. So for anyone who's out there considering consulting, there's a lot of ways you can make money consulting. The obvious way is just traditional consulting, is the way I kind of view it. Where is this? Obviously, is consulting. That is where you just trade your hours for work to be done. And some people might actually consider that more of like contracting, really. So maybe I should just put contracting, which is just, getting, hours for work. So some people do like to make that distinction that, just because you are calling yourself a consultant, if all you're doing is kind of trading hours for work to be done, you're really just a contractor. And so that's generally a limitation for most people, because you can only make as much money as hours in the day. So that's often a limitation. Try to figure out why this won't let me. Anyways, another option out there that I like to talk to people about, and this is where I think people start to make decisions. I think there's kind of two tracks here, which is from the most basic sense in terms of like making money consulting. There's just pure, you're a solo consultant. And I'm going to try a different one because for some reason that feels solo consultant. That kind of just sticks whatever you size you are. Okay, solo consultant, and then you can have an agency, right? I feel like I've spelled out agency. I think that's right. I'm just going to check that because I feel like I'm wrong, but I feel like it's right. Yeah, okay. Actually, might be wrong. Let me just double check. No, it is. Okay, so agency. So generally, these are the two basic methods if you're trying to make money consulting. So here, the obvious limitation is you're one person. You're one person. So it means you only have so many hours in the day to make money. Which basically means in this case, right, the only ways to, let's say, how to make more money basically means you have to increase the hours you work, increase your rate. Generally, there's price per value. And that's kind of how you can make more money in that space, right? If you want to make more money, you're going to have to do something in this space. The benefit is, right, like, so this is a con right here, right? Let me just put this under here. So con is you're one person, you only have so much time. Pros, you now I have two. Pros is you don't have staff to pay, which is really good. Like it's really hard when you start growing your business to kind of make that jump, as you can imagine, because what ends up happening here is you need enough work to keep these people busy, whoever you're hiring, but you also can't have so much work that's too much work. So having no staff to pay makes it really, really easy. What generally happens is, you have more control. So if something goes wrong, you can generally fix it. If you didn't do the best job somewhere, you are very inclined to be like, hey, I'll spend all night fixing it. Like, you don't have to worry about it. And you're not going to lose any money on it, or you're going to lose your time, but you're not going to lose, money on it. And so you have control of your brand and things of that nature. Again, and these are just the two basic ones. We're going to talk about a few other ones here in a second. So let's talk about the agency model, right? Agency model just means you hire a bunch of people to do it. So in this model, right, how to make more money, get more projects, hire more people. Really, that's what it is, right? Like, the more people you have, the more projects, or the more projects you have, the more people you need, the more you make money off of them. Basically, increase margins on top of hours. So this is where a lot of people don't like the agency model, because basically what generally happens, and if you've worked as for a consulting company, you probably have realized this, right? I don't like that. Let's make this flat. Okay, so generally, right, like, there's the amount of money, the agency model, there is your hourly rate, or your worker's hourly rate. And then most people probably wouldn't, I don't know if you'd be surprised, but it's not uncommon to basically just double that. Like, a lot of these consultancies try to pretty much double their rate here. So if you're getting paid actually, or triple, if you're getting paid, let's say 75 an hour, they're putting on easily another 75, at least, if not more. Again, it's not uncommon to see that they're charging a lot more. This does, like, so some of the problems that come here is you have a lot more overhead. You need HR, you need you need payroll, all of these things that cost money, possibly offices, all that costs money. So you have a flat rate already. You have to keep workers busy or utilize. Basically, if you think about it, like, every hour you're paying someone or to not do, and they don't have work to do, you're having to pay that out of your pocket, so to speak, which is one reason they do have these higher margins, is because if for some reason they run into an issue where it's like, hey, we don't have a project for this person, we kind of have to find them work around whatever we're doing to give them something to do. They need that money to come from somewhere. So that's part of the reason they might have the $75 an hour. Obviously, if they're doing a really good job, you're never underutilized. You're 100% utilized, and they're happy, right? Because you're making them $75 an hour, if not, again, more. Yeah, this could easily be like 100, 125, depending on your role and level. Pros obviously is scaling is not limitless, but scaling, um, or at least you can make more money with less work, so to speak. You can kind of do that here in solo consultant, but you generally hit a cap. Like eventually you hit a cap. You might be able to sell your thing a little more. You might even here, consulting businesses in general are hard to sell because there's not a ton there in terms of like value that's going to continually be created, right? Like the real value that comes from consulting is your ability to land clients and then deliver work. And if you can't do the first one, which is land clients, which is usually connected to the person who is landing the clients, there's not as much to sell. It's not to say there's nothing, but it's definitely it doesn't have SaaS PE ratios where you're making 20 times on earnings or something, or 15 or 10. It's usually 10 actually. I don't want to say 20. I'm thinking stock market right now, and off of like EBITDA. So those are the kind of two core models in terms of like making money, right? So if you're an agency, you do this. You're basically just selling people's time and putting a margin on it. That's kind of the main ways. Here, let's put this actually underneath here. This will be kind of something interesting to keep later. Now, other ways to make money include things like referrals, but specifically referrals for products. So some things that people may know or might not know, and I know some companies that basically rely on this. A lot of consultancies, that's how you spell it, right? You can see my constant, without spell check, it's really hard. I'm constantly questioning myself. It's not saying it's wrong, but it said it was wrong. So I feel like I spelled it wrong. Anyways, a lot of consultancies in general do what are known as referrals, which just means like they have a partnership. A lot of consultancies have partnerships with, well, at least it tells me it's wrong. What? Partnerships. Okay, thank you. With, what do you call it? Like vendors. And if they sell a vendor's product, they get a cut. Very common. I'd say this can range somewhere between like 8 and 20%. And some people will do it. Let me show you. And this could be anywhere from like range from 1 to multiple years. So I think Fivetran, at least when I started, was doing like 15% for like the first year, and then they would continue to do like 5% the following years. And so a lot of companies actually like this is part of their business model is on top of the fact that they have this margin, they have to make referrals, and that's why a lot of companies are very tightly connected with certain vendors. Not just because they like the extra money, but because it's almost part of their business model. Where it's if they are not getting this, it might actually impact their ability to make money. Overall, I like myself. I think I have only earned one referral in my life. I've used multiple products. There are some limitations on certain companies, like with Snowflake, you have to at least sell a contract of a certain size for this to even be in discussion. One contract, I had to be a certified essentially partner in order to earn it. And they said they would do it retroactively, but I had to go through a certification and I didn't have the time. And it was like $2,000, which is not nothing, but it's also not enough for me to stop when I had a ton of work and I was working full time at Facebook and trying to do a lot of stuff. So I didn't do that option, but referrals is often a key point. Okay, there's a few questions and I'll kind of dig into this here. Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying for anyone who doesn't know, I think I linked the TFA. It's a free community. It's got a giant free section. Honestly, the free section at this point has more than the paid section. I'm going to work on the paid section, but the free section has tons of free content that I'm putting out, and I'm going to keep putting out This video is being shared on there, and there's tons of videos you probably haven't seen because they're all on there. And if you'd like to join, I answer tons of questions like this one. Why are there so many more consulting contract positions than permanent ones? Which ones do you prefer? I guess I'm curious what you mean there. Like, if you're asking, like, why do so many companies hire contracting more than like consulting? Again, weird distinction there. A lot of people like to make the distinction, but if we're talking specifically about contracting, companies love contractors because they can fire them at any time, right? And it's not firing, right? You're not firing them. You're just, your motives or your initiatives have changed, so you don't need that staff, right? It's staff augmentation. And so that's the real reason that some companies like it. Microsoft got in trouble for it because they were trying to do everyone on contract. Because if everyone's on contract, you don't have to pay them benefits. You have all these extra layers that you get if you don't do full-time employees. So, but there's legal limitations there as well, where you can't work at a company more than a certain amount of time or a certain team for a certain amount of time if you're a contractor. So yeah. As consultants, do you deal much more with stakeholders in the business? Yes, you 100% do. You have to. That's what makes a good consultant, I'd say, is half of it is being really good at that stuff. An agency is a good option for junior and mid. You mean starting an agency? It's going to be hard, mostly because you have to the big thing about agency. So let me go back to this. So the big key thing about agency, let me see, where's cons? You have to keep employees utilized. Kind of under you have to keep employees utilized is your job is no longer if you're the owner, your job is not to code or do the work. You're in sales. You are just there to keep the wheel going, right? You have projects and you just need to keep the people working on projects because that's what makes you money. And if you at any time don't have projects, those people basically eat your money, so to speak. So you can't, you're not really able to code anymore. You also, I forgot to put this in here, you give up control. You lose control and quality. I just assume that if you have an agency, there's a certain percentage of projects that will be bad every year. It's probably minor, but it's enough to be you're going to get heartburn, one time a year if you're doing 200 projects, because someone's going to do something wrong somewhere and you can't control it. So cool. Let's see. I want to start data consulting. Skill set gaps are worrying me. I am really good at SQL visualization tools and Python. I have done some work with LunTBT, Fivetran connection, etc., but not extensively. I wouldn't get too concerned. Let me see if I can move myself. I wouldn't get too concerned on that. There's a ton of work to be done. And I like to tell people, you can kind of layer your work. Maybe initially you're doing some contracting work, and then you can eventually do, bigger projects. The first projects I was doing was Access database to SQL Server migrations. It was not what you call complex. So if you have good solid skills, you can kind of build from there. Any assignment would require more that what I am strong at, SQL and Viz. What do you suggest address the skill gap, real or perceived? Learn as you go or learn first before you commit? It's a little bit of both, right? Try to spend some time learning as you can, but you're really not going to learn until you're in the thick of it and you're stressed and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? But if you've been able to learn Python and SQL, a lot of these other tools are going to be very easy, right? DBT is not hard. Fivetran is not hard. You'll be able to learn all of that. All right. Going back to making money. So we have, you can be a solo consultant. You can get referrals. Referrals, again, is not really so much about a business model. It's just usually an auxiliary way of making money, right? So you got referrals. You got the agency. You got solo consultant. Now, in this, some other options can be, let's see, course, doing trainings. So let's say trainings. So this one kind of fits a little more. So trainings, what's really nice about them, how to make money. How to make more money. Well, you do more, but you generally have more people attend them. And it could be different ways you do them. Some people might do trainings or courses that they do just for themselves, where it's, you might host it on what's the Maven, but that's really it. Or increase the value or price of the product. So I'm going to do pros here first, which is obviously a big pro here is this tends to pay more per hour than consulting. Hold on for 1 second. Sometimes when I start talking and my head starts tilting down. All right. So tends to pay more than an hour than consulting, right? Like you can easily, in my past, I've charged anywhere from like 7 to 15K for training. This might be for a day or two, but you can imagine. Let's see. So if we do, let me try to figure out how I want to visualize that. Well, that's weird. I'm just looking at that 7 or 10. Okay, that's why it's coming over. I'm like, why is it coming over? Right. So for 2 days, if you do 15K and you're doing maybe, let's say, so that's 7.5 each day. And if you do something like 5 divided by 5, yeah. So that seems wrong. Oh, but it's 7.5. Yeah. So let's say you do, 1.5 hours, or sorry, you do 5 hours. Let me put this example below. So let's say you do 15K for 2 5-hour days. That's 1.5K. So you can make a lot of money doing this if you get a very good training that people like. So that's kind of a pro here. Is like from an hourly standpoint, you can make a good amount of money. Still not Jeff Bezos levels of hours of money, right? There's no that's one of those jokes. I think this might have been that point that like most people end up realizing that I'm like, oh my God, Jeff Bezos makes a ton of money. Cause I think I was like doing a consulting course. I was like, wow, I'm making so much an hour. And then I was like, Jesus, like it's still not even close, right? Like I'd have to work like several hundred years to make Jeff Bezos money, even at this hourly rate. So that's a pro, obviously. Also pro, it's usually, what do you call it? Like a template, right? Maybe you've had to change it a little bit, but you can kind of build a product almost. So cons here, I think the biggest one is there just tends to be less of this work. Right? Like you really need to find projects. So you really need to be good at selling this work. Another con they might run into is like you're not always going to get these 7. Like these are probably some higher days. Most of them, probably will be closer to maybe like a few $100s an hour. Still a lot, but probably a little less. So it's not necessarily a con. That just depends on how you're selling. So that's kind of one other way is you can do trainings, and I think trainings are very popular. A lot of people like doing trainings or selling a course. And that's another thing you could do is like there's trainings and then there's courses, like pre-done courses. So this is in person. I should put in person. Right? In-person trainings. You got to find like generally a niche that you really like, right? Like do something that people you're really good at. Don't just do what everyone else is doing. And then obviously do pre-filmed courses. I'm going to kind of put this one here. It's a little different, but there's a lot of similarities here. Let's see. Oh, another thing, obviously, in terms of how to make money, is speaker fees. Maybe just speaker engagements. I'll just say speaker fees. So if you become very popular in the space, right, because you've written a book, because you've done something, you can start charging fees for your speaking time. Generally, let's see, obviously, how to make more money. You can become more famous, right? And generally, this is become more famous or influential. Just ask for more. Honestly, I think some people would be surprised. Some speakers are probably making several times over like 10 to 50K for speaking engagement, depending on who you are. Again, depending on your status in the industry. You do need, again, status. So it's like need to have status of some kind, which just means, write a book, be well known, start a company, sell a company, like something. You have to have an interesting perspective or an interesting topic. So you need status. I think there's also this risk of becoming like the speaker trap, where all you do eventually becomes speaking. And I think that's one of the risks of doing speaking, is you just do speaking, and then like everyone's like, okay, but like what do you actually do other than speaking? So I think it's fine once you've like done something that is very influential, right? Like if you want a good example, right? If you've been president, you can kind of just be a speaker for the rest of your life, because you've got probably stories till the end of time to tell. But if you're early in your career, I'd say, you should really focus on really doing more work, right? Like do more solo consultant work, so you have in the future interesting speaking topics to write on. It doesn't mean you can't speak during the same time, but I'd be cautious of what you do. Oh, also, I think what is it? Joe talked about this recently. Often travel is a pain, right? Like it's fun until it's not, right? Like if you have so much, right, jet lag, travel's a pain, and jet lag, like those few days, like okay, maybe let's say you're making 20K, which is great. And especially if it's in a different country, you're probably out for a week. So you're not making just for that one speaking engagement. You're likely doing it for that entire week. Again, still a lot of money to make for that week, but you're going to consider that whole week lost, and not just oh, it's just one day, I'm making all this in a day. You're not. You're going to be giving up a lot of time. You're likely going to have to give some level of marketing help if you're that person. So you do have to consider those things as well. Let's see. Pros, though, again, it's usually a good rate. I like to say it's a good, like, what do you call it? Almost like a good, again, another good auxiliary kind of way to make money. Good rate generally, as long as you're good at negotiating. What was there was another thing I was just thinking. Oh yeah, you do get exposure. Now, to be clear, I think again, Joe Reese also talked about this recently, where you are the one bringing exposure to the conference. Like you're going to get exposure, sure, and there's some benefits, but really you're the person likely bringing in the people to sit the butts in the seats, right? They're just a conference or some sort of event. You are the person bringing butts in seats, but it does give you an opportunity to be out there and show your face and talk about something interesting. So it's kind of this interesting balance. Let's see, what other questions? How do you actually practically get started in solo consulting? Where do I post myself up to try to find work? Yeah, and this is one reason I have I'm gonna post it here as well, the Technical Freelancer Academy, because I do go over that several times, or a few different pieces of videos and content. But usually, to keep it simple for most people, the way I like to say it is, you need a way to get in front of people, and you need a way then after you get in front of people to get them to trust you. Those are the kind of two basic ideas. How you get in front of people can be, if you want to say post stuff, you might be thinking Upwork. That's one way. The risk there is you are, fighting an uphill battle in terms of price for a little bit. But once you get that trust, so you get like lots of good ratings, you can often charge more. So there are a lot of people who do make a decent amount on Upwork. You can do marketing, right? You can do content marketing, which is a lot of what I do. You can do a lot of sales work. So maybe you're really good at using Sales Navigator on LinkedIn, which I do have a video with someone on the Technical Freelancer Academy that is free as well. So you can go check that out. But basically, you just have to pick one of those methods and like really dig into it. Actually, I just posted, I think on the newsletter from the TFA, and I was talking about I did we call it a 1-hour webinar talking kind of about different inbound lead methods. So there are definitely a few different methods there. How do you make arrangements, contracts, how to make sure all that non-technical or non-engineering stuff is well taken care of? And if perform solo, do you use Upwork or something like that? In terms of like all the arrangements, I just have a few templated contracts that cover work. Generally, my goal, one, is to make sure it's clear that we need to communicate a lot, right? Me and the client need to talk a lot during our project. So I want to make sure, hey, we're on the same page. So I think that's a big part of it. Also, making sure, you get clear early on what expectations are. What's pricing, how do they work, is always helpful. Making sure in that statement of work that you put together, you have clear assumptions written out. So, hey, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm not going to do. And so really just going through that and making sure you're very clear on that. And if you perform, and then I kind of talked a little bit more about Upwork in the prior question, I think. But there are just different ways or different places you can kind of go in terms of finding clients. How profitable are data products, curated data sets, and apps on the marketplace like Snowflake and Databricks? Have you seen success stories? I don't have any success stories, and that was actually that was going to be the next. Let me dive into this. So, data products is kind of the next place I was thinking. Good rate exposure. I think I'm definitely going to like make this into something. I feel like I'm putting together something here. Data products. So this is a good question. So this one might be more of me just writing. So for data products, what you eventually have happen. So after consulting for a while, you'll notice patterns for specific industries. From there, you can kind of you can build data products. So what I mean is, a very common solution or a very common method of people making money via data is they kind of create their own central data warehouse. Actually, I have a database here. I'm just going to take this picture here before I zoom back in. So actually, do I have one of these over here anyways? Oh, here, let me just take this example. This is kind of what I mean here. So one method in terms of like building a data product, and this is saying SFTP. It can be SFTP. This could be, this could be automated API extracts. I've seen multiple versions of this. I've worked with a few companies like this is what they do. They basically get data pulled from different methods. They'll put it into a file server, then they'll put it into a standardized data warehouse. So in between here, what I should put in here is you create some sort of standardized ETL that basically makes all these data sets similar. And then on the flip side, on the other side, what you build is some sort of service, right? Which could be, actually, let me put it in here, services, data services, or data products. And this can be a really good idea if you feel like you are understanding industry, because what you really need to do is understand a specific industry really well to do this well. So this could be dashboards, obviously the easiest, dashboards. Could be metric or algorithms. I've seen someone do like forecasting. But generally what you need in this paradigm is you need to have a really good understanding of kind of the business, or good domain knowledge. Generally, you need some sort of in with some companies already. With companies in the industry. So if you plan to do, construction work or something, it's good to have someone's data and understand what tools are being used. So like, are they using certain ERP or ERP-like systems, right? Because you need to get used to them and work with them. And so let's see what you need. Be familiar with ERPs. ERPs / similar system. And then yeah, kind of this all wraps up to good domain knowledge, but also understand and what end users need. So this can be a really good way of making money if you have an industry that you feel like really, really well. And you can build a data product because it scales, right? Like it's arguably infinitely, like if you develop it well, I've seen some people not develop it well. If you develop this part well, like this whole part, well, okay, really, if you develop the whole system, but really in particular this part, I like to think of. If you develop this part really well and make a data set that matches, because usually what happens is as you're pulling in these data sets, I'm trying to figure out how I do this effectively. I need to be able to build a table, which I don't know if I'll be able to do that well. I don't want any fill. No fill. Where's no fill? Oh, no background. So really what ends up happening is, this is going to be too long. Let's see. Basically, you have table A, which could be, shops or products. Let's say product categories. And in that, you've got toys, you've got video games, you've got food. But then in maybe this other table, this other data set you essentially get from another company or company B, product categories. Yeah, let's say company. And this is where a lot of the standardization comes in. Instead of toys, you might have, maybe it breaks it down even more. So it's like remote control cars, vegetables, right? What do we call it? Xbox video games. So you often have this standardization step that maybe this is the categories you want, but you have to map these categories over. So this is usually the important part when you're building data products, is standardizing it so that your data sets look the same. And that's where a lot of this standardized ETL comes in, and it's a lot of work depending on how easy you make it. Because some companies have made this really a solid system where it's very easy to work with. Others, it's every new customer you onboard is a month, and if you want to scale, it's very expensive, and then it kind of defeats the purpose. So that's kind of a good way of looking at it. So data products is another one where maybe you built a product, an industry really well, and now you're creating metrics for construction workers or for dentists or something, and selling it for $2,000 a year, $5,000 a year, whatever the price point works. And people can like that, and that is an option. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I'm really thinking that I want to do. Some other, maybe, let's see. Oh, you know what? I do have a few. Obviously, some other methods are advisory, because I do some advisory work. So what's nice here, right? This can often be, especially if you're well known in the industry or just have a good sense of product. You're often like, how would I say this? Like giving advice and insight to products and vendors, as well as making intros to possible customers. So for customers. So I've got a few advisory positions myself where a lot of this is what I try to do, is try to give them insights on the market, try to give them insights on the product and how they can maybe make it better, as well as trying to help them find customers that would be a good fit. If I run into someone, I'm like, hey, I think you'd be a good fit, then I can possibly make an intro. This usually, right, has a few ways. Maybe you charge them a fee, but for many people, it's probably more of a equity thing where you get a little bit of equity in order to figure out how things go. But again, this depends. It could also be advisory. Vendors is one option. So maybe I should put vendor advisory. So that's one option. But you could just as easily do something like company advisory. But this is almost more like a retainer. So more on like just almost like a fractional, whatever you want to call it, fractional employee, but perhaps you give higher level advice and give insight to what you're seeing in the industry. So you might see that there are certain trends or certain things with AI or ML that are actually happening. And because you see so many companies, you can kind of give them an aggregate view, right? Obviously, you can't be specific. You don't want to be, giving away customer secrets. But if you have trends that you see, people do want to see that. People want to hear that. People want to know that. People want to see around corners generally. Okay. So I think that's most of the ones I wanted to cover. Did anyone have anything? I mean, there's other options, to be clear, right? Like on top of this, there is things like mentorship or like one-on-ones. I don't do too much of this because it just takes a lot of time, and I feel like I've done it a few times. It takes work, and then if people don't show up, I feel a little bad because you charge them a number, and then sometimes they don't show up after a certain amount of time. Like they're excited at first, and then it's like, do you give the money back? But you were planning, you did put a lot of effort into it, so that's why I don't like doing a huge amount of effort into this. Let's see. I'm just trying to think of anything else in my notes. Oh yeah. Sometimes the IP. So you might have like IP and licensing. If you create something, like maybe you're really smart and you came up with Agile, and I say that and like you were smart and you like understood that you should license the idea, and now you make a ton of money because you license something or something of that nature. You come up with a new theme or topic or idea, and then you become the person that can like license it out so other people can like maybe sell your course or sell your training or sell your methodology. I don't think Agile did that, but just the point is IP selling. The only other thing that I would think of that I've done personally, I haven't done IP, but I've done freelance blogging. Yeah. If you have no work, it's not a bad option to kind of lean into. It's like, hey, let me just sell some maybe help someone write some blogs if you're really good. Or even if you're not that good, you can get better and you can have someone pay you to get better. So as you're trying to learn how to blog, that's an option. Let's see other methods. I think that's most of mine. I mean, there are definitely other options. And some are very similar to, or they fit under solo consulting. So under solo consulting, we could also put, let's see. So solo consultant, you could also put, or multiple, it could be a solo or agency. Let's see. What was I just thinking? A retainer. So you could do a retainer. You might, advisory kind of fits under here as well. Maybe you've got, YouTube or podcasts. But these are probably less connected to your consulting and more like, hey, maybe you do some ads or something on here. Retainers focus on consulting. But those are kind of the ways that you can make money if you're out there trying to consult. I don't know if anyone has any questions. I'll be here for a little bit longer, so let me know your thoughts. Hopefully this is helpful, for anyone who's wondering. Again, we talked about like solo consulting and kind of some of those pros and cons here. Agency model, kind of how it works and how they make money, right? Like they kind of have to make a ton of money on top of your hours because they could risk being underutilized or underutilizing you. This also leads to, I think one of the other things is I don't know what you'd call it, almost like hour stuffing. I don't know what you should actually call this, but really what happens is because you want to utilize everyone, maybe you put an employee on a project that doesn't need to be on a project, but you need to get their, want to get them to 100% utilization. So you put them on a project anyways. So there's a little bit of that can happen for a lot of these companies as well, right? Like you need this PM to get their full hours or you're paying them, and because you're paying them anyways. So yeah, we talked about referrals and how a lot of companies will give you, if you work with a vendor, will give you a cut. Depending on how big the projects are or how big the contracts are and how well known the vendor is, right? Like if they're well known and the contract is large, it's going to be smaller. If they're not well known and their contracts are either smaller or something of that nature, then they're going to be higher. Some might just give you a flat rate. In fact, some are like, hey, we know we don't charge a lot, or we don't charge a lot upfront, so we're just going to give you a flat rate. And hopefully that will encourage you. Again, some pre-filmed courses, in-person trainings. There's a lot more scalability here, but generally a lot less of this, right? Like you have to figure out exactly, unless you have something that's like in need right now, like there's a current very big need for a certain technology or certain methodology. Generally, it's not as much work there, so that's one of the limitations. And then speaker fees. Again, speaking is great. You can make a decent amount of money, but you will possibly have, jet lag and travels, kind of a struggle. And also, you kind of risk maybe becoming just a speaker, which early on in your career, probably not a good idea. But later on, this might be fine. Again, you can get paid well. And then we talked about data products, which can be fun because you can build something. If you see this problem that you keep running into over and over again, you might as well build a product around it because it can scale pretty well. And then also, actually, I didn't put this. You can sell this, right? Like this, you can sell. We talked about this earlier. That's hard to sell consultancies. This is easier to sell, right? You have recurring business. Because you have recurring business, it's easier to sell. And so that's generally a good way of thinking about this. But yeah, and then I could actually even there's plenty of companies that do this as is. And then advisory again can kind of give you a couple different methods of advising. It could be more of a vendor approach, could be more of a company approach. Basically, people want to get advice from you on the industry. You kind of have to be in the industry long enough to know it. But hopefully that's kind of an interesting idea for some people out there. And then we had some other methods. A lot of these, other than IP, so IP not included, but like these two up here, I would consider more as like filler, right? Like, hey, I don't have any work. Maybe you'll do some one-on-one calls or some mentorship or some freelance blogging to kind of fill the gap while you're waiting for bigger projects. But I would not want to make that my focus. Again, you kind of start figuring out what mix you like and what you like. Some people love agencies. Some people like building agencies because they feel like they don't want to do the work or they want to be able to sell something at the end. Because it's really hard to sell a solo consultant company unless you had, again, some IP or something connected with it. But overall, the big problem with solo consulting companies is you can only there's nothing to sell. It's just your time, and that's really the only value that exists. And again, unless you build an IP. So hopefully that's helpful in understanding the ways you can make money in consulting. I don't think anyone's asking any more questions. So I've kind of wrapped this up and summarized the last about 40 minutes or so. So hopefully that was helpful for everyone who watched. If no one has any questions, I can kind of wrap this up. And I can see you guys in the next live. And let me know if you have any topics you'd like to get covered too. Cool. Oh, yeah, you're welcome. Awesome. Well, I'm not seeing any questions, so I will wrap this up. Thanks everyone for joining. Hopefully this was a fun time, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks all. Goodbye.